Okay, so we want to do one more example using the for each loop, and this one is test 6 in the book, pages 339 to 340, so I kind of gave it my own flavor though. Before I do that, let me just show you what the target is. If I look at my home directory, just do something like that, you'll see all of the things that exist in the home directory. There are some things that are directories there. There are some things that are files there. There's one that's red, right? That's just a .tar.gzip, basically, an archive file, but that's still a file. So we've got files and directories in there. Okay, so now let's take a look at chapter 13, test 6. I'll show you one more thing that we can do that will be very, very handy, and that is we can allow Bash to develop lists of files and things for us. One of the most common things that we do with scripts is we're going to be manipulating files. We're going to be reading them and getting stuff out of them, looking at log files, looking for certain content in log files, dumping out the last things to be added to log files, going and collecting various files from various places or collecting information from them, putting them in some kind of consolidated form, just all of this kind of stuff that we can imagine needing to do. And so a way that Bash allows us to do that is to provide a path and a pattern within that path, and anything that matches the pattern will be expanded by Bash. In other words, Bash will treat each thing separately. How does that help us? Well, right here where we see this $home, that's the home directory, right? Slash, and then the asterisk. Asterisk matches everything. That is to say, any number of characters in the name of something, because that's how we refer to files, right? By their names. So any number of characters, no matter what the characters are, will match the asterisk. And we'll look a little later at how we can make things more specific, just match certain ones or whatever. But in any case, asterisk will match everything. So in other words, everything that you saw when I did the ls command back at the command prompt a moment ago that was in the home directory, each of those will match that asterisk. So what does this do? What does Bash do? Well, when it sees this, when this comes up, it will expand that into a list of all of those things. So remember how we've been, in the for each, we've been dealing with lists of things, right? In this way, we can specify a list, and Bash will go ahead and expand it for us. So the first thing Bash does is expand that, and then it executes this command for each thing, whatever thing is. That's just a name. Okay, I could call it for smiley face in $home slash asterisk. I could call it for a windbag in home. It doesn't matter what you call it. Okay, it's just a name. So I called it thing. So for thing in $home slash asterisk, that is in this list that Bash is going to generate of all the things that are in there, do the following, and then done. So look at your big structural pieces first. For, do, done. That's the big structure. Okay, all right, fine. So we're going to make a loop over all the things that are in the home directory. So what are we going to do? Here's what we're going to do. Look at the big structure first. If some condition holds, then do something. Otherwise, if some other condition holds, then do something. And in any other case, that is, if it wasn't one of the other two, then do something else, and then phi. That's the end of the if. Okay? So let's see what the conditions are. If it is the case that thing is a directory. Now, how do I know that? That was last week's chapter. Go back and review chapter 11 if you don't remember that. Okay? This test tests to see if the thing that follows is a directory. That is, a directory as distinct from a file or a link or some other thing. Okay, so if it is the case that thing is a directory, then echo thing is a directory. Otherwise, if it is the case that thing is a file, again, last week's chapter, right? Chapter 11. If it is a file, then echo thing is a file. And then in any other case, say, not really sure what thing is. Okay, fair enough. Let's take a look now at what we get. And there it is. All of those things that you saw listed before up here above. Now we see that all of them are indicated here, and it tells us is a file, is a directory, whatever. There wasn't anything that didn't fall into one of those two categories. So, okay, now that we've had a good look at the for each loop, the next thing that we want to go to is nested loops, which is on page 347 to 350 of the text. I'm skipping around a little bit. There's also another kind of loop called a while loop. We'll visit that here in a few minutes. That's the page 343 content and following. But I want to go ahead and do the content that's pages 347 and following first. So what I'd like to do is to go ahead and create a new file. We'll call it chapter 13. I'm just going to call it table. And here's what we want to do. Of course, you know what this line is and what that does. Go ahead and save it so we get our syntax highlighting. And what are we going to do? We'll say this is chapter 13 nested loops. I want to generate a table of adjective and noun combinations. Okay, sounds exciting, right? Yeah, I know. But hey, I want to use stuff that's that everybody understands, so that we don't have trouble understanding the application, and really can just focus on the syntax and how to put this stuff together. Okay, so I want to make a list of adjectives. I don't know, how about blue, prime, oops, right, solo, brand new, bright, true, and clever. What a great list, right? Let's come up with a list of nouns too, and then I'll explain what we're going to try to do here. Okay, list of nouns. How about, I don't know, tower, king. That makes me think of crown, bridge. You know, let's get out of Lord of the Rings, right? Light, power. Okay, good enough. Don't want to make a career out of this. Okay, so what are we trying to do? Well, I've noticed that oftentimes manufacturing company names, especially ones that are in the East, tend to take an English adjective and an English noun and put them together, and that becomes their company name. So I thought we'd make a company name generator here to give us some good ideas of what to name some kind of venture. How about that? So how would we do this and combine all of these and all of the possible combinations, one adjective combined with one noun to make a name together? Let's start with a for loop, and we can say for adjective in the adjectives. That would work, right? And there's my do. Remember, you can put it on the same line if you have a semicolon in between. So I'll just do that. And then at some point, of course, then we have done, right? Okay. So now what do we want to do? Well, for each of the adjectives, I'm going to have this thing called adjective. I want to combine it with each of the nouns. So how do I combine that with each of the nouns? Let's do it this way. We'll make another for statement. We'll say for noun in nouns, right? And I'll do. And then we'll have another done right here, okay? So what is this doing? It's saying, well, for each adjective in adjectives, do the following. Now, for each of the adjectives, I want to combine it with every single one of the nouns, okay? So in other words, looking at my list of adjectives, I want to have blue tower, blue king, blue crown, blue bridge, blue light, blue power, okay? Is what I want to output, right? So let's try that first, and we'll just say echo $adjective and $noun, like so. So we'll ram them together, turn them into kind of one word, and now we've got our company name, right? What this will do, take a look at it, and let's just think through it for a second. For adjective and adjectives, well, the first time through the loop, what does ADJ, adjective, what value does that take? It gets the value blue, right? So now it has the value blue. Now then, for each noun and nouns, do the following. Well, what's the first time through? What's the value for noun? Take a look at the list. It's tower, right? And so now I'm going to echo adjective. What was that? That's blue. And then the noun is tower. Now then, I'm still executing this inner loop. So I'm not going to do anything in terms of the outer loop. Adjective stays the same as blue, but when I get to this done, I go back up here. I see, are there any more nouns in that list? Yes, there's another one. It's king. So noun is now king, and I output blue king. That would be a bad name for a company, right? Then I go back up to the next one, and noun becomes crown. So I echo blue crown, and etc., etc. Okay, keep going until I'm out of nouns. And when I'm done, I know I continue after that for loop, right? And so what does that do? It gets me to the done of the first for loop. So I go back up to the top and say, well, is there something else in adjectives? Yes. Prime is the next one. So adjective now is prime. And now I'm going to look at the first noun. So it's tower, and I get prime tower. And then prime king, prime crown, prime bridge, prime light, prime power. I don't think any of those are very good company names either, right? We might get some good ones out of this, but not many. Anyway, so if you need to, go back in the video and play all that again so that you understand the interaction here. But the first time through this for loop, I hit another for loop, and that for loop is going to exhaust itself before I move to the bottom of my first iteration, my first time through the outer for loop. We call this the inner for loop, and this the outer for loop. So the inner for loop exhausts itself, and then the outer for loop advances to the next thing. And then we start the inner for loop over again, and it goes and it exhausts itself, and then then the outer for loop goes to its next pass. And this is done until the outer for loop has exhausted itself. That is to say, we've gone through all of the adjectives. So let's go ahead and write that out. And of course, we need to Chmod chapter 13 table. Whoops, what do we want? How about just 700 so that we can execute it? And then we'll chapter 13 table like so. And you see that we have this long list. It's going so far off the screen though. I think I want to fix that. Don't you think we ought to improve the way that looks? What if we were to not have a new line each time? Let's just start with that. And we're going to iterate through this, and we'll try to make it a little more sophisticated here as we go, right? So the first thing I'll do then is say don't put a new line character in there. So let's just write that, exit, and we'll run it again. Oh my, there they all are, but they're all just kind of run together, right? So that wasn't terribly helpful, was it? We shortened the amount of output, but it looks kind of ugly. So what else could we do? Well, one thing we could do is we could separate them with spaces. And so I'll put it in quotes so that with a space after, okay? And now at least they've got some separation between them. But I don't know about you. I still think this looks kind of rubbish, don't you? So why don't we add a little bit of sophistication here? Okay, maybe what we'll do is say that we only want a certain number of these to be on each line. The list of adjectives, a list of nouns, it's too long. I only want 4 of them on each line. How about that? So how would we go about doing that? What would be nice is if after we had output this little bit right here, right, and echoed this, we'd like to say something like this. How about if it is the case that the num names on this row, that's a big name, isn't it? So if it is the case that the number of names on this row is is equal to, I don't know, we said 4, right? And you're saying, but that variable isn't defined yet. There's no value for that. Yeah, I know, but we'll take care of that in a minute. So if the number of names on this row is equal to 4, then why don't we do this? We'll just, okay. So if then we will do the following. Let's go ahead and echo. What do I want? What I really want is to go ahead and echo I want a new line character. Remember, -n means don't put it on a new line. If I echo something else, hopefully that will give me a new line character, just an empty string, right? But that'll also go to the next line. How about that? So that'll finish out the current line, and then I say phi. So now all I need to do is I need to make sure that num names on this row is kind of a thing. So how do I want to start? Well, before we start outputting anything, so we can go ahead and define it, num names on this row equals 0. There aren't any names on this row right now, right? That's the first thing I need to do. And the second thing is every time I write a name out, I need to increase the number of names that's on this row, right? Okay. So how would I do that? I can go here and say num names on this row. I should have picked a shorter name, shouldn't I? Equals, and let's create an expression. This seems like an easy way to do this. There are many ways to do this, some of which we learned last week, but I'll say num names on this row. What do you think? Plus 1. How's that? Okay. So the number of names on this row is equal to this expression. What's that? The number of names on this row plus 1. So I just outputted 1. I say, hey, now there's 1 on there. The next time through the loop, I say, oh, now there's 2 on there. Now there's 3. And if at any point it equals 4, then what am I doing? Well, the first thing is I'll echo this. There's one more thing I need to know, though, I need to do, and that is we started a new row at this point, haven't we? Because we outputted a line. So let's see. We'll say now then, oops, num names on this row equals 0. Okay? So take a little time. I'm going to upload this code so you can study this a little bit. Okay, you can hit pause here, of course, and study it. But you want to convince yourself that in this case, the first time through, when we output a name, we say there's 1 on this row. The next time, there's 2. It's not equal to 4 yet. The next time, there's 3. The next time, there's 4. Then this condition becomes true. If the number of names on this row is equal to 4, that becomes true. So then we follow the then. We should echo the empty string, but that should also give us a new line character. And then we set the number of names on this row to 0, and that's the end of that. And then we go back up, and guess what? We output a name, it becomes 1, etc., etc., and we just keep doing this. So now we'll just get four of these names on each row. Just wanted to show you this because formatting, being able to format your output in some kind of sensible way is very, very important. And in fact, one of the assignments I'm going to give you is actually to produce a multiplication table that's formatted, and I'll talk a little bit about that actually at the end here today. So that I can give you heads up about some things that you might want to know and that you might find useful in doing that. But being able to format your output is really, really crucial. Let's save that and exit, and let's see what we get this time. And there it is. Yeah, so that works. One problem here that I see in my output, notice right here, we ran the command. We're getting 4 per line. Perfectly fine. They're not lined up or anything. That's okay. We'll do some of that with the multiplication table. But notice when I get to the end, I get my prompt right after that. In other words, there was no new line character there. I'm going to fix that real quick. We'll go back in here, and we know that when we're done with everything, that we need to go ahead and just echo again so that all that's done. And then, just for good measure, we'll exit with a code of 0, but that wasn't, it was this that was missing, right? Because if we didn't finish a line right at the end, then we were just echoing with a -n, which means don't put a new line character in there. And so that means that when the prompt comes back, it's going to end up being on the same line. This will solve that problem. and it'll end up with an extra line if in case there happen to be exactly 4 on the last row, but that's okay. That's not a big deal. So I like it a little bit better. Let's just run it again, and there we go. That's nicer. Okay. With that, I'm going to go ahead and break this video, and we'll move on to the while loop in the next one, just so I can keep these in a little bit smaller bites. I certainly encourage you to take a look in the textbook on the content on nested loops, pages 347 to 350. Some of it, though, will be the while loop and other stuff that hasn't been really introduced yet. You can at least look at it once, then come back for the next video, and then you ought to be able to go back, hit that again, and hopefully it becomes pretty clear. Feel free to ask questions if it is not.